When I meet with a new buyer, they are often so excited about the process, they often overlook a couple of things that might be troublesome to them when it comes time to sell. Fortunately, I work with a lot of sellers, and so I know what they've been through when it's time to sell that home. So here's a couple things that I would look out for in the home buying process in Katy, Texas. Hi, I'm Carolyn Bauerschlag, a local realtor right here in West Houston, helping people just like you relocate from all over the country right to our great city. One major buyer beware is any home listed by these iBuying platforms like Opendoor or Orchard. These companies spent a lot of time and a lot of money during the COVID boom buying up houses off market and then trying to turn around and flip them to the consumer. But here's the problem with that. These guys just bought houses that were maybe in undesirable locations or backed up to something weird or had structural or mechanical deficiencies where the person selling to Opendoor or Orchard couldn't really sell it to anybody else. And what do these companies come and do? They do kind of the landlord special. They came through with buckets of paint and new flooring and tried to relist this home online as if it were brand new and wonderful. But here's the problem. In the state of Texas, we are required to issue a seller's disclosure as part of a sale, but the Texas Property Code has a small little footnote that says if you've never occupied this property, all you have to do is zero out that seller's disclosure. Well, guess what? When people are laying out their life savings, they want the history on the home. And if this home sold off market to Opendoor or Orchard, there is no real paper trail for us to go back and refer to. So when it comes time for Opendoor to come bring this home to the market, you'll see it with like your standard luxury vinyl plank flooring, maybe some kind of gray and maybe some virtual staging that they did to try to get you to click on the listing. But when you go and you open the seller's disclosure, sure enough, they say, we Opendoor don't know a single thing about this property. And wouldn't you know it, that makes a buyer uncomfortable. So when we see these homes, it's not just that we don't know anything about the roof or the HVAC or the foundation or the electrical systems, previous fires, previous flooding. It's also that you need to watch out for why did this home get sold off market to these guys anyways. So it typically could be things that are in a floodplain or backs to a sewer plant or might have just been in really dilapidated condition to begin with. So as a buyer, beware of homes that are listed by these iBuying firms. Another type of home that I'd be very wary of buying in and around Katy, Texas in the West Houston area is something that's in the 100-year floodplain. Now, the 100-year floodplain isn't necessarily always bad. What it technically means is that there's a 1% chance every year that a home will take on water in some sort of terrible rain or flooding event. But in Katy, Texas in particular, up towards Cypress, out towards Fulshire, there's really not that many homes that are in the 100-year floodplain. So if you choose to be maybe the half a percentage point of people that buys in these 100-year floodplains in these unfloody areas, it stands to reason that when you go to sell that property, it may not have appreciated as much as a home that simply doesn't carry that flood risk. Now, this can be a little bit tricky to people because number one, they don't know that maybe that flood risk exists, and that's what I'm here for. But also because they know of other areas in the greater Houston area that are in a 100-year floodplain where they say, well, it doesn't matter to them over there. So perfect example is if you think of Bel Air or if you think of Meyerland. These are areas that unfortunately have very traditionally gone underwater with that Braeswood watershed that runs kind of on the south side of Houston. And people are like, well, people rebuild and the values go up. And you have to ask yourself why. The values go up over in that area because that whole area is uniformly suffering from the same low elevation. And also, as these homes unfortunately have flooded maybe 2 or 3 times, they stop rebuilding them at the same elevation. They scrape the home and they are required by city ordinance to grade that foundation out of the floodplain by at least 2 feet above whatever that 100-year floodline mark is, right? So what you're dealing in then is like an intrinsically high value piece of property with a brand new home on top of it. Of course it's appreciated. But when you're thinking about why are these properties in Meyerland or in the Med Center always going up in value or Upper Kirby or, kind of in and around this Braeswood watershed, it's because they are so close to, the Med Center and downtown, and they're appealing to people who have price points and budgets that are above $1 million, right? And when you think about Katy, right, like Katy doesn't really have 100% of its property or territory in these 100-year floodplains. So you're kind of sticking your neck out if you're going to be one of very few homes that are subject to ongoing flooding risk. Another type of home that I would really encourage you to not buy out in suburbia, in West Houston, in Katy, Cypress, Fulshire, is going to be anything that backs to a major road. Now, when I say major road, what that means to me is probably something that's 2 lanes on one side and 2 lanes on the other. So four lanes is what I would consider major in our residential area. And again, the reason for that just goes to numbers, right? Like if you look in these master plan communities, you're not going to really see that most homes back to a major road. So you may say, oh, well, that doesn't bother me because I'm moving from a very densely populated urban area out to the suburban area. I'm used to this. But the reality is that I would say the psychographic of the people that are buying in these areas are trying to get away from a lot of that noise. So it may not bother you, but it is important to put the shoe on the other foot if you were a seller and think about what would this seem like to another buyer. Now, sometimes people don't really fully consider that they might not get the use and enjoyment out of their outdoor space that they think they will get, right? So if someone is going to say, yes, I will back to a property that is on a major road, we really want to look at like how far is that house set back off of that road, but we also try to book a showing during like the 8 a.m. or the 5 p.m. sort of time frame so that you can stand in the backyard and really assess for yourself, am I comfortable with this or does this make me not feel so good? For as many people that don't like backing to a major road, there are just as many people that say, I don't want to look at a backyard neighbor, right? So they would much prefer to look at a privacy fence that does back to a road with like a nice privacy green screen of trees than they would be looking at a home and like potentially the noise associated with, you know, young kids or people having fun or doing whatever they're going to do in their backyard, right? So there is a lid for every pot. So this is not me saying don't buy this home. This is me just saying consider how backing to a road might affect the resale value of the property long term. Another type of home that I'm actually going to probably beg you not to buy is something that backs to a water sewer treatment plant. And this is something that you may not think to look for, but I've actually gotten pretty good with Google Maps and like the satellite terrain view, looking for these poo-poo plants, basically. So if you are within, I would say, even like 3 or 4 streets of a water sewage treatment plant, like even if when you show the home, you're like, I don't see it, I don't smell it, everything's fine. You're probably not going to be fine. It could just be that the wind is blowing in the like favorable direction that day. And these are just facts of life. Like you obviously need water sewage treatment plants in high density population areas. But like for the life of me, I can't figure out why builders or developers put them in certain places. Like in one of my favorite communities, Seven Meadows, there's a very, very, very stinky sewage treatment plant that backs to some of the most beautiful golf course homes. Why do we do that? I don't know, like put a big old park or an easement or like community use space or something, like just to put some distance between you and literal sewage. And so like when you're looking at a home and you say, I think this one could be great. I wish what we had was a scratch and sniff feature on our multiple listing service, but unfortunately, you really just need to go look at that home. And then you also need to do a Google aerial map view to see where a water sewage treatment plant might be. Now, for the most part, I would say this is not disruptive to people's searches. Like, it's not like there's one every other block, right? Like they're not that densely populated, but there are little pockets and areas in Southwest Katy in particular, where for some reason there's like 3 of them all in a row. So don't do that. Another type of home that I'm going to really ask you to consider not buying is a home that backs to some high tension power lines. Now, in Katy, we don't have a whole terrible ton of these. And what I mean by high tension power lines are like the big like Iron Maiden, like 5-story monsters that have like 40 wires hanging off of them. They pop, they make a lot of noise. Buyers Google them and they say that, hey, the electromagnetic fields around these wires are potentially harmful to your health. Maybe it's just unpleasant to look at, right? And again, law of averages, right? If the vast majority of the homes that are in our area don't have homes that back onto these major utility industrial looking things, then your value of your property is not going to go up as quickly as the other ones around it that don't have maybe an obstructed view. Now, fortunately, in the Katy area, we really have like one main chain that traverses South Katy. So it's pretty easy to stay away from them. There's another chain that kind of goes up, I would say, on the north side of Katy, in and around Cana Island. But again, it's not all over. Kind of a really big one is at the West Park Toll. It's like at West Park Toll and Spring Green, in towards the Richmond area, where it's just highly industrial. And like, for the life of me, I can't figure out why this developer bought this land and put homes all around it. But those homes really have not appreciated over time. So as your friendly neighborhood real estate agent, even if you think that there are other attributes of that community or of that home that far exceed the high tension power lines, I'm not going to tell you no, but I want you to be acutely aware that when it comes time to sell, you are going to lose a pool of buyers simply because they don't want to be in or around a high tension power line. Another type of property that I'd be very careful of buying out in the suburbs is going to be something with a very narrow backyard. Now, the lot size itself might be great, but it might be that the home is positioned on a lot in such a way that the backyard is really not as deep as you would hope for it to be. Now, in most of suburbia, so Katy, Fulshire, Richmond, Cypress, what you're going to see is that these homes are built away from the fence line by at least 7 feet. But when you think about 7 feet, like that's not that much. Like you could open your back door and like almost touch your fence, right? So 7 feet is where your utility easements are going to be. And what that means is that you cannot pour concrete, you cannot dig it up. You really shouldn't do anything other than maybe like plant some hedges because those utility easements are for the use of utility companies. So if they need to make updates to electric service lines, or if you need to have fiber cable dropped or whatever, like these utility companies are just going to say, this is our easement, we have the right to use it, and they just mow through and dig it up. But really the implication, if you take that one step further, is not just that they could mow over your backyard and dig it up for power lines. It's that, what are you going to do with that space, right? So when you're in suburbia, the most likely scenario is that you are going to be with families, right? And families want a place to have a spot for their dog, or they want to be able to maybe put up a play set for their children. Maybe they have hopes and dreams for a pool someday, right? And if your lot just is not set up to be able to accommodate that, it never really will be, and there's not anything that you can do about it. Now, there is, again, a lid for every pot, right? Like you might encounter someone who is retired who says, I'm so tired of dealing with a pool. I don't have kids that need a play yard. I don't have a dog. Like I would actually prefer to only have 7 feet that I have to mow every week, right? But if you think about law of averages again, like you're dealing with a much smaller size of population that would potentially be interested in a property like that. So it's not to say don't buy it. It's just to say consider what this might look like when it comes time to sell. The last type of home that I would really ask you to be very careful of and actually strongly not consider buying is something that's been constructed by DR Horton or Lennar within the last couple of years. And when I say that, what I mean is like 2022, maybe 2023, all the way through current day. Now, these two builders before, like homes that are 20 years old, 15 years old, even maybe 10 years old, they might be in excellent condition. But these two builders from primary knowledge, like me personally walking through these, me personally watching people deal with them, these builders have done a lot to really strip out what I find to be responsible building practices out of the homes that they're selling to consumers. I find it to be irresponsible, and I'm not really sure that the house that someone's buying today is going to be in the same condition that it is, like structurally, in 3 or 4 years. And when you think about that, that's insane, right? Like you're getting a mortgage for 30 years, which the subtext to that is that you shouldn't have debt on something that is no longer useful to you, right? So like, of course you think a home should last 30 years. And when I'm looking at the building inputs and I'm saying, I really don't feel good about this for you 4 or 5 years down the line, I'm going to kind of try to ask you to reconsider. Now, these builders are so popular because they do a great job of advertising to the consumer about how quickly they can build a home, the features and benefits that they have, but most importantly, what they're doing is they're buying down the interest rates for buyers, right? Like they're saying, hey, I'll get you a 4% note in a market that's 6.5%. Well, of course you're going to be attracted to that because everyone's trying to manage cost. But the thing is, your friendly neighborhood real estate agent, I'm going to ask you to always consider what this means for you long term. Are you going to be paying debt on something that's costing you money that it really shouldn't be because it's built with poorly constructed materials, or because the way in which it was built was just poorly done, right? So I am going to name names. Those are two that I would say be very, very careful of if they were built anytime in the post-COVID boom. So 22, 23, 24, 25, we saw both of these builders really take a lot of steps out of the building process and remove a lot of like majorly important inputs when they were putting together a home. Now, I want to make sure that this doesn't sound unnecessarily biased. I currently live in a 20-year-old Lennar home. It is the Village Builder brand. It's like their more like, I guess, elevated line, but it's absolutely a Lennar home, and it's unimpeachably great. The quality on it is wonderful. Like Lennar used to advertise on the radio. They would say everything's included by Lennar. And I would say that was largely true all the way through early 2021. You could show a home and it would have a beautifully poured slab. It would have brick on all four sides. It would have gutters on all four sides. It would have sprinkler systems. It would have an architectural shingle. You would have tile on your backsplash. You would have 3-centimeter countertops. Like everything legitimately was included and inspected beautifully, you know, whether they were 5 years old or 20 years old. Same with DR Horton. They're DR Horton homes, like their Emerald line, that are 25 years old, all over Richmond, Katy, the Woodlands, that are still in excellent condition. So it breaks my heart to see these builders kind of gut themselves from the inside and really put together a poor quality product, because I truly do believe that every homeowner has the right to put their very hard-earned money towards something that is going to serve them well long term. So this is not to impugn the builder fully, but just to say, if you are looking at something that's relatively new, please buyer beware. If you're thinking about moving to Katy or the West Houston area, I would love to be your realtor. We give advice to our clients just like the advice that you've seen here in this video, and want to make sure that whatever you buy is going to be a wonderfully appreciable asset for you long term. And if you found value in this video today, please make sure to click the link below and subscribe. We put content like this out every single week. See you soon.